In this module, we're going to be looking at identity and access management, right? The security best practices of using this in AWS, right? So there's a number of these practices. So let's start off with what I would regard as the number one, right? And that is really, you shouldn't be using your root account, right? This is the main account, the main credentials for your account. And it should only be used as a kind of like a break glass kind of situation in emergency. And additionally, you shouldn't be accessing it using access keys or pragmatic ways, right? So really, delete the access keys in that account, and also don't use the root account. Create new accounts with more granular permissions at the admin level, right? So just keep in mind that is the number one security best practice, right? Then also, introduce the concept of least privileges. When you're giving access to something, only give the access that's needed, no more, right? And also in brackets, I put in both ways, right? Think of this in bi-directional as well, right? Not just one way, right? But always keep privileges to the minimum that is needed to access the resource or execute the actual task, right? The next bit is use IAM Access Analyzer and CloudTrail for monitoring, right? Use these two things in your account to look at what is happening to the access of identity and access management, right? An important aspect, you're getting visibility here, right? Then what you want to do is you always want to think in terms of temporary credentials, right? So for example, use roles for the apps on EC2 instances, right? So not permanent ones, temporary, right? The next bit is really just the basic one, right? Strong password policies for users, right? So that just should be mandatory, right? Enforce that using policies, etc. And multi-factor authentication, or MFA, should be done for all users, right? Highly recommend that it's done for all users, right? And use identity federations, right? Don't reinvent the identity framework, right? If there's other existing places where credentials are used, leverage that for single sign-on, like for example, using SAML or OAuth and OpenID Connect, right? So use ID federations, right? Identity federations. Next is rotate the credentials regularly, right? So that includes the access keys and the password, right? So you should be rotating these credentials on a fairly regular basis, right? And then really kind of like basic good security hygiene practices, remove unused credentials, right? If there's accounts that haven't been used, that's kind of stale, delete them, remove them off the system, right? And then most importantly, no sharing of access keys, right? So that's kind of like a bad practice just in general. And then finally, use policy conditions to define access to resources. And what I mean by policy conditions is define the conditions that must be satisfied when you're accessing something. For example, make sure that SSL is being used, or multi-factor authentication, or you're only allowing specific IP addresses, right? And that's what I would consider extra security. And I'm going to leave you with this thought, right? That last bit is all about conditional access, right? And that's the biggest thing right now when we look at identity and access management, right? Conditional access, going beyond to understand the context in which that connection is being made, right? Thank you.